Now today we're doing a starter replacement on this Honda. Now very quickly, if your vehicle's stuck, maybe you need it to get it going, to get it to the parts store, to get it in your garage, that sort of thing. What you could do, many of you probably know about this, but get yourself a long screwdriver. This is 23 inches in length because the starter lives pretty far down in the engine bay behind the plenum here. So what you need something to actually make contact with the starter. A 12-inch screwdriver isn't long enough, but what you want to do is make contact with that starter. Get yourself a hammer and give it a good couple whacks, hard. You want to make sure it's pretty hard. Soft taps won't do anything. And this starter was completely dead. Once I hit it a good 10 times, it started right up. So you can get maybe another 3-4 times out of it, but don't push it. If you have to make a run to the parts store, maybe take a buddy with you. Keep the car running so you can get inside the parts store, get the starter, and get back home. So let's get to it. So right off the bat, I'm going to disconnect the negative terminal, go into the battery. This is to prevent any shorts from happening. And then I'm just going to disconnect the sensor, remove this wire loom. There's a clamp down here, then I'll pull up the rubber hose that runs from the throttle body to the air filter. Now you really don't need to remove this hose, but it just gives you a little bit more working room. And there's also another vacuum line that runs to the top of the engine, so just go ahead and pull it back. Now fortunately on this Honda, the starter lives really deep underneath this plenum, so I want to clean all this up because I have to peel the plenum back. So I'm just going to remove this rubber hose. I'll grab myself a pair of pliers in a moment. I have a connection down here I'm just going to remove. So in other words, I just want to remove all the wiring, the hoses, so when I peel this back, nothing is really snugging or snagging at it. Also a good time to inspect the hoses. This seems to be in good shape, but if anything is cracked up, replace it. You know, you're here, do it now. Then we have two 10mm nuts holding down this plastic piece. And there's another nut behind this wire loom. See if I can get to it. Go. And everyone is a little bit different when it comes to, as you can see, it's really tight. When it comes to changing the starter in terms of the technique or the procedure that they'll do, I just tend to like get everything nice and clean. In other words, the cleaner the area for me, the better it is. But sometimes it's not necessary to remove all these parts. But again, this works for me. And these are 12mm bolts. Okay, so I have everything here pretty much cleaned up. I just disconnected all of the harnesses again. I even disconnected some of, these are coolant lines that heats everything up in the wintertime or in cold weather. Yeah, I don't think you have to do this, to be quite honest, but again, I just want a lot of wiggle room. But certainly what you do have to do, if you take a look on the bottom, it's certainly tight down here, but right down here, there's this bracket right here. This guy right here, and that's a 12mm bolt. You need to back that out. You don't have to remove it, but just back it out. And let me give you a different angle. So that guy right there, it's holding the bottom of the plenum really sturdy. So you need to loosen that up. So again, I just want to make sure everything's nice and clear. Certainly is a little tight. There we go. And I will be replacing this gasket, so if you score it up a little bit, don't go crazy. And right down here, this is where the starter is located. So as you can see, not the easiest spot, but like I was saying earlier, you see these little punch marks right here? This is when I was tapping it with a hammer and a screwdriver, and it did work. Hit a couple times, good hard hits, and you'll get a good 3-4 times out of this easily. Okay, so I have the socket over the bolt, and then I'm just placing a socket, another socket. It's really tight. So in other words, I'm making a very long handle. The longer the handle, the easier. It's on there, and there we go. Okay. This is very tight. Without power tools, you can do it, but use the handle because it is not. There you go. Okay, there you go. So that's the way to do it with just basic hand tools. Okay, there's one, and then we have another one right back here, right behind this metal tube here. So same with this rear bolt. In this case, it's a 14 millimeter. I just have a long extension, a little bit more difficult to get to in a sense because we have this metal line here. But there you go. Okay. Okay, here she comes. And there she is. And before we reinstall the new starter, I just want to make sure that the new part compares to the old part and everything looks to be in good shape here. The other thing that's interesting with this vehicle is a remanufactured starter is about $5 less than a brand new starter. So of course I have a new starter with a lifetime warranty. And to tighten up the bolts, I'm using the same technique, the ratchet with a long extension, so you can get both bolts very tight. Okay, so here goes nothing.